What's up, everybody? I'm Michael Hanley, and I've never done anything like this before. I've never done stand-up comedy, but when my AP Lit final grade, my high school graduation, my college acceptance, and really my future were on the line, I decided it was time to say, screw it, let's try new things. So I'm giving it a shot. And if that doesn't encapsulate senior year, I don't know what does. Obviously, as I would for any assignment at McQuaid, I researched this one using credible sources. And what Wikipedia told me was the number one reason people have a problem with stand-up comedy is a fear of failure. For my entire life, I've never had a fear of failure simply because in a lot of aspects, I wasn't supposed to succeed. You know, if anyone in my AP Lit class and I were to play one-on-one basketball, I should lose. A lot of people make first judgments or quick reactions upon first meeting someone. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing that right now based on how this routine's going. I've never been good with first reactions. Frankly, look at me. I was born and I grew up to be this incredibly attractive, hot person who everybody loved and is just the best, you know, funny, but really like a perfect 10 type deal is what we're dealing with. As you can clearly see, this is a video. And I was never good at first impressions because a lot of people would just assume I was just another pretty face or a hot piece of ass and nothing more. And that allowed me to connect with Edna Pontellier and Kate Chopin's The Awakening. You see, Edna is a woman who's trapped in a male-dominated society, and when people looked at Edna, like when they look at me, all they would see is a woman, or in my case, a hot dude, and what they wouldn't see is this incredibly complex, intelligent human being. So I was interested to see how Edna would resolve this, and maybe I could use it to help out my own situation. And what Edna does is, in one final freeing action, she kills herself by walking off into the ocean. And with each stroke she takes further out away from the shore, she's freeing herself, and she ends up dying in this incredibly powerful act of defiance. Chopin writes, "But whatever came, she had resolved never again to belong to another than herself." And I thought about that a lot, and I thought about how powerful a statement that was, to kill yourself, to demonstrate to that society that, like, this is how oppressed I was. And the more I thought about it, I realized nobody other than Edna would understand what the hell happened. Because at no point on that shore was Edna like, alright, this is what's happening. I am, in fact, killing myself. This is why I'm killing myself. This is what you guys could have done to prevent this. This is what you can do to prevent future suicides in the future. That doesn't happen. So instead, this incredible example of powerful feminine independence actually plays right into a stereotype. Guys are going to be sitting at the bar on Friday, just like posted up, you know, oh, hey man, did you hear about Leonce's wife, Edna? And, you know, that sketchy guy in the corner is just going to be like, yeah, she died from swimming. What an idiot. Women, right? And they're going to high-five and go back to drinking. And instead of creating a dialogue that maybe had to get started about how women are maybe equal, all that Edna has done is created the Edna Pontellier rule, which is going to stipulate that all women at Grand Isle in the summer have to wear floaties if they want to go swimming. Great job, Edna! You did it! Now, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that I related to Edna, because other than her struggle mirroring mine, I relate to her in another way. I remember last year in my junior English class with Mr. Herschel, I was doing a poetry unit where we had to memorize poems. So obviously, I chose the shortest one I could find, and it was a lullaby to the American South after the Civil War. But again, just because it was short. And he complimented me on my choosing of the poem because, and he says this in front of my entire English class full of 16, 17-year-old dudes, my voice has a certain matronly quality to it that just worked really well with the poem. As you can imagine, everybody found that hilarious. And, I didn't love to hear that, but in one aspect, I guess that's true about me. I've never been the most masculine guy. If you were to open up my closet, you would find some pastel clothes. I'm nowhere near Riley Benner's level, but they're in there. And I realized that this helped me relate to another character, and that's Jake Barnes. Jake Barnes is physically emasculated in the Great War, and he was shot in the genitalia, and that doesn't allow him to reproduce. Before anybody panics, and you're sitting there like, oh God, Hanley's going to start talking about his dick, I'm not about to get up here, pull a Donald Trump, and start talking about my penis. That's not what I'm doing. But it's relevant to understand that that's where Jake Barnes is coming from. You see, Jake Barnes was this strapping image of vitality, as so many of the young men who went off to fight World War I were. And after the war, he's kind of more down on this end of the spectrum with like a Ken doll, if we can use that terminology. I had such an emasculating experience myself. After my freshman year of high school, I decided I would get a scuba diving certification. And before we go out on the dive boat, they tell us if you get motion sickness, you might want to take a Dramamine. I am someone who gets like sick on planes, just by turbulence. I physically cannot read anything in a car or I'll vomit. But when they said, hey, when we're going to be on the open ocean in a dive boat, you might want to take motion sickness, I thought, nah, I'm good. Because the select number of times, maybe 3, I'd been on a kayak on a flat lake. I didn't feel sick for that hour I was out there. So why should like 5 hours on the open ocean be any different? So we go out, and you guessed it, I'm feeling sick. And the way you jump off a dive boat is they line you up in 2 lines. And the back of the boat is really close to the water, so you just jump from there out. It's not like the backwards flip you see on the TV shows. And so they line us up in the 2 lines, and the captain's shouting dive, and people are jumping. And I'm in the back of the line, and I'm feeling it. I'm going to be sick. And so I go to sort of step across the boat. And as I do it, I don't step up how you're supposed to with a flipper, but I just walk, because I'm more focused on I'm about to vomit. And as I do so, my flipper catches and throws me forward. And so I flop forward down onto the bottom of the boat like a fish you pull out and throw on the deck. I'm just lying there on my side, sort of flopping around. And I am pinned to that deck because I have 40 pounds of gear on my back, an oxygen tank, and I've refused to participate in any leg day, so I can't move. And so I just grab that trash can, I hug it tight, right like here, like a child would hug a teddy bear during a nightmare. And then I start vomiting into it. I'm on my side. And a boat hand comes and he literally picks me up like this from the back and he walks me to the back of the boat. And I'm like, all right, dude's going to have me finish off the back of the boat. It's going to be great. I'm going to be feeling better. Probably nap while they're down diving, whatever. And this dude literally, in one movement, just tosses me right off the boat. Just like that. Like just, boom, Hulk strength. And as I'm flying through the air, and the water, I just see it getting closer, it was my figurative shot in the dick moment, and I was emasculated, just like Jake Barnes was. And so, I looked about how Jake Barnes dealt with it, and Jake Barnes seemingly came to be defined by his injury. But it's how Jake deals with his impotence that I found solace in. He simply deals with it. Jake accepts that he'll never be with Lady Brett Ashley, and instead of eating more protein powder than Jake Lord and just churning out workouts every day so he can get jacked, he just kind of comes to terms with it. He doesn't overcompensate to seem masculine. Jake enjoys his bullfights and his whiskey, and I relate to that, as I've never felt the need to overcompensate for not being a macho man. But Hemingway loses me on the very last page of the book. See, Hemingway writes, "Oh, Jake," Brett said, "we could have had such a damned good time together." Ahead was a mounted policeman in khaki directing traffic. He raised his baton. The car slowed suddenly, pressing Brett against me. "Yes," I said, "isn't it pretty to think so?" "Are you kidding me?" Are you kidding? Jake just calmly just sits there in the car. Just, yes, isn't it pretty to think so? The love of his life, like the girl, he's crazy about her, basically just says to him, hey, if you weren't injured in that war that has undoubtedly left you scarred for life, emotionally shattered, and will probably be a contributing factor in your short, tragic life, we'd have been quite the couple, you know? That is like going up to a homeless dude on the street, just like, hey, listen, I see you begging for change. I do. And I would love to give it to you. I would. It would be great. But, like, you're already homeless, and you are homeless, you're doing the homeless thing, you'll be homeless tomorrow, even if I give you the change, so, like, what's the point? You know? You're homeless, it sucks, sorry. He didn't choose to be homeless. Jake didn't choose to get his dick shot off in the war. It happened. Now we're trying to deal with it. If I were Jake Barnes in that situation, I'd have had some choice words for old Brett that Edna and the rest of the feminists from the Awakening would not have been too happy with. Obviously, Jake's decision to just sit there and say, yes, isn't it pretty to think so, is better because it allows him to remain friends with Brett in the long term. But I don't really think like that. I make, snap decisions. I live in the here and now. And that allowed the teenager in me to relate to Victor Frankenstein. You see, Victor Frankenstein is interested in science, and this interest takes him so far as to build a monster that can think for itself. Never a good idea to do, but he does it. And the minute he builds this freak, the minute he does it, he sees it, he panics, and he literally runs from the room as if it's as if it's just something you deal with in the morning. You know, like, oh, the faucet's dripping, but I'll deal with it in the morning. Oh, I created like a 7-foot-tall monster with the ability to think for itself that could probably kill lots of people. I'll get to it in the morning. And just runs off. Gets out of there. And I'm not about to tell you I relate to Frankenstein because John Falwell and I built Andrew Vaccaro in my garage. But the reason I relate to Frankenstein is because I have had an oh shit reaction like that where I just wanted to run away. If I could have run away on some Report Card Thursdays, I absolutely would have. You see, over the course, though, of Mary Shelley's novel, we see Frankenstein change from that scared, terrified young man who runs away from his problems to this hardened, guy who vows to fix what he's done and goes so far to accomplish that he's literally tracking that monster to the ends of the earth to kill it. In a more serious vein, I can relate to that too, as from really 8th to 10th grade, I slacked off, ran away from my problems, and my grades in high school suffered. And this year and last, I had to take the more hardened approach of working and to apply to colleges. You see, that seems to be kind of a common pattern with boys. We go from standing in the cheering section, looking around, saying, hey guys, who was it? Who said it? After we just shouted some obscenity. And then senior year, you get kids in the cafeteria literally staring teachers down, singing that certain song about a mosquito that nobody seems to like. And we grow up, and with that comes accountability and the courage to admit our own faults. Luckily, for all of us, the road to that place doesn't usually involve us inadvertently killing 5 different people. But hey, we all get there. And after reading these 3 works and reflecting on my time at McQuaid, I was feeling pretty good. I was like, all right, I've grown up, I've matured, I'm ready to hit the world, get at it, be a critical thinker, and contribute to society. And then we read 1984. Yeah, you might imagine I had a tough time seeing myself in the role of a forward-thinking person who was oppressed by an authoritative administration who resided above him, whose seemingly sole purpose was to limit every single facet of his life. But somehow, reflecting on my time at McQuaid, I was able to relate. See, I respected Winston as I too have a rebellious streak in me, and that surprises a lot of people. As depending on the day, I can look anywhere from like a 40-year-old office worker to like a 50-year-old dad, and even down the line to like a 70-year-old retiree who lives in Jupiter, Florida. But I do have a rebellious streak in me. I'll do reckless things that fly in the face of authority, like mixing khakis, or sometimes I'll leave the house without a belt on. You see, I have never been in Winston's situation, though, of facing that level of oppression. It's bad. Clearly, no one has ever tried to control the amount of exercise I do when I wake up in the morning. And I've never been tortured for not conforming to what was deemed normal. When O'Brien exposes Winston as this free thinker and has him tortured, the torture that ultimately breaks Winston is sticking a cage of rats right in his face. Obviously, we can all relate to that. Anyone who has walked down the middle school hallway at the end of the day after school knows what it's like to feel a cage of rats right in your face. But when Winston gets broken, he legitimately believes that 2 plus 2 equals 5. And he remarks about how he loves Big Brother. And as I read that, I wondered if ignorance was bliss. Would it have been better for me to just be a stupid hot kid? Now, as I thought about this, I realized the only reason Winston is so unhappy living under Big Brother is that he realizes he's being oppressed. Orwell writes, "The choice for mankind lies between freedom and happiness, and for the great bulk of mankind, happiness is the better." And I realized this awareness leading to unhappiness wasn't unique to the book 1984. In Frankenstein, Mary Shelley writes, "How dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man is who believes his native town to be the world, than he who aspires to be greater than his nature will allow." All of these characters were unhappy because of what they knew. Jake Barnes knew how terrible the realities of war were. Edna knew she was more than what she was seen as in her society. Frankenstein knew that he had created that monster and he was responsible for all the turmoil and death it caused. And Winston knew he was being oppressed. I spent all this time trying to prove to everyone that I'm smart, but it turns out the smartest thing to do is just be an ignorant idiot. With this new worldview, politicians and pro-athletes make so much more sense to everyone. Over the course of my McQuaid career, I saw myself in a lot of literary characters. From a sexually awakened woman, to an oppressed man, to a mad scientist, to a World War I veteran. I think McQuaid has taught me to be every facet of myself, and this has allowed me to relate to so many different characters. The education has clearly taught me a lot about how to live and how to get by, and if you don't believe me, I just got away with doing an 18-minute stand-up routine in place of a 10-page paper. So clearly I learned something about how to get things done. Thank you for listening. Mr. Boone, please don't fail me. And in closing, I am hot, I am stupid, and I am proud. Thank you. God bless America.